cats, I'm Denis and welcome back. A lot of students start being acquainted with the works of Frédéric Chopin with this piece. And of course, there are good reasons for that. The piece is technically less demanding than the vast majority of his works. Although there are a lot of artistic challenges, even in this piece, and I would like to mention a few most important in my opinion. First of all, the tempo is largo. How slow should it be? On the one hand, largo is one of the slowest tempi in music. On the other hand, there is a huge danger that your left hand might sound vertical, like very static. The time signature that Chopin provides us with gives us a hint. It means that we should feel the bar rather in 2 than in 4. It means that I try to feel only 2 beats in the bar. So instead of playing like each note as a beat, or even playing with 4 beats in a bar, like it's still very static. So instead of that, I might try to feel only 2 principal beats in the bar, having groups of 4 notes as 1 beat, like 1, 2, What helps me incredibly in such rhythmical structures is grouping those notes in a particular way. I usually separate the first note of that group, like the very first beat, and then lead the rest of them toward the next strong beat. So it's like 1, and then 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. This is a highly universal method that might improve your playing and phrasing drastically. Doesn't matter what you play, but if you have a rhythmical structures of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say like that, you might separate the first note, making a slight break after it, and then point the rest of the notes toward the next strong beat. And that would improve your articulation and your phrasing a lot, because if you think like that, it sounds much more fluent, much more kind of moving and articulated actually than just thinking by strong beats. But in this prelude, I don't arrive to the strong beat too directly. Instead, I direct these notes there to the next strong beat, but soften the first beat a little. So what I mean is creating the sense of direction, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and then softening the first beat a bit. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and so on. It's important to perceive this left hand rather as 3 independent voices than simply as a chord progression. So try to think about them polyphonically. As we know, Chopin absolutely adored Bach's works, and he has enriched his own compositions with polyphony as well. In order to voice these chords nicely and also to play all 3 notes perfectly together, think about finding stability and releasing your thumb. It's very important to find a very comfortable position for this finger, because many students urge to play like, let's say, at the edge of the key. That's very much unstable, or holding the finger like too vertical. So it's very important to find a very, very comfortable spot that you use for playing with this finger. For me, it's this one just next to the nail, and if I would try to lean on this finger, using that spot, I might feel support in this muscle, in this part of my hand. And this is exactly what we need. You might also notice that if you would play with a very straight thumb, like that, you might also feel a lot of tension here, like in that part of your hand. And this is not a very good thing, because these muscles are weaker, and playing with a straight thumb and causing stress in them might also lead you to some tension problems. So the best thing you can do is just to curve the thumb a little bit like that and try to lean on it, relaxing your wrist like that. And the distribution of the weight might help you a lot, because if you would imagine that the whole hand is 100% of the weight, I would distribute that weight between fingers in the next way, like 30% on the fourth finger, 30% on the second finger, and 40% on the thumb, so slightly more weight for the thumb. And for that, I might kind of slightly rotate my hand in order to lean toward the thumb a bit. Because you might really feel that when you voice the upper voice in this chord. It sounds actually much nicer than if you would start voicing the lower voice or the middle. It's actually the most terrible when your middle voice just sticks out. So leaning toward the thumb might really help you to achieve a nice balance in this chord. Of course, this depends on a particular situation. For example, in this situation, when I have the D minor chord, like that one, and then just one voice, a middle voice, goes towards from A to G sharp, I might want to voice the middle voice just to show this movement. Or, for example, at the very end, just compare how this last chord, how creepy it sounds when I voice the lowest voice, the B flat, and how normal, less creepy, less tense it sounds when I voice, for example, G. Like, it's fine, of course, it's still beautiful, but it sounds much more creepy, like very dark. And this is what I like actually about that chord, because this B flat is the seventh tone of our seventh chord, so that's why I would like really to show it in this particular situation. That's why I would also strongly advise you to play the skeleton of the piece first, holding those voices that don't move and playing only the ones that do. For example, so playing like that, playing just changing chords, you might try to analyze and to feel the subtle changes of emotion. The first chord actually is an inversion, so we don't have this bass E. That's why it doesn't sound just sad, it's also very unstable without that bass. For example, later there is a very beautiful spot when we have a C major chord in the left hand, like here. It's just a C major chord, but it still sounds incredibly sad with that A on top. Because with that note is not a C major, actually it's just a A minor 7th chord. very bluesy one. So what I really adore about this piece and why it's so special is that the subtle beauty of this piece is in the smallest, narrowest changes that are created by the narrowest intervals, because we always move using the narrowest intervals. So we have 50 shades of sadness, but the piece actually starts with a huge leap, and only then the melody starts to be very narrow, very painful, kind of looking for a path. That's why in my recent interpretation I didn't actually want to start too soft, because this distance, this aspiration, is a huge distance, especially in comparison with what comes later. And then if you start with that feeling of aspiration, it might give you a more freedom to build a longer line in the melody. For example, creating a tension toward the third bar, like. And then releasing this tension toward the fourth bar. Of course, there are plenty of possible interpretations, and we might do just the opposite thing, to start very restrained, very lonely, and very softly. And to lead the melody toward the fourth bar, for example, creating tension on this chord. And this option would give us an opportunity to make a sad surprise when the melody finally slips lower, like here. The piece definitely needs some rubato. Rubato in Italian means stolen, a stolen time that we take and actually never give back. There is also a popular view that if you take time from somewhere, you must also return it back. Does it mean that if I would take time here, I should hurry up then? That's a good question actually, and I believe that it might provoke a very intense discussion, and I would leave it open for now. And I would be very happy to hear your own thoughts about that below in comments. Another absolutely universal thing that this prelude might teach us is how to play a descending second. This narrowest interval, despite its size, has a huge amount of tension. A descending second is traditionally a motif that symbolizes pain, sadness, crying, regret, mourning, and the list goes on. It is very important to play the lower note much softer. And the best way by doing that is by using just one wrist movement. So on the C, I go down with my wrist, and with B, go up. It means that I apply much more weight on C and take the weight back while playing the B. This is actually one of the main principles about legato playing, because if you would have just a group of 4 notes, like, let's say, under a slur, even if you would connect them with fingers, it's not legato still, it doesn't sound legato still, because I was doing right now a separate movement for each note. As you see, and of course, usually people play like that in the beginning. But it's very important to consider that if you want to provide a really nice flow, a nice legato, you might try to play all those 4 notes using just one wrist movement. So as you see, it sounds incredibly smoother, and the phrasing becomes much more interesting and convincing. What I like particularly about the Kier edition is that these accents, there are just 2 accents actually in the piece, at least in the Kier edition, and they are written in a way that they visually seem to be longer. They resemble a diminuendo rather than an accent, actually. And this printing trick always provokes me to play them in a more singing way, closer to tenuto, by the feeling, with a flattened finger and cushioning the hit with the wrist. So that would be a very straightforward accent, not really acceptable in this music, but playing that accent with a flattened finger and cushioning the shock with the wrist might give you a nicer sound, like. Very often people ask about that ornament and how to play it. So you just reach the principal note and then you have to sing around it. This ornament may remind us of the bel canto tradition style, actually, because Chopin loved Bellini's operas and Italian opera in general, and that influenced his development as well. So in order to follow this tradition, we should start slightly softer after the principal note, avoiding the accent on the B. So this note is quite intense, and then I start very carefully. There's a lot of surprise with this C major chord, because basically we had to come and the piece had to over here, but Chopin decides to give us a final tour. This is amazing, actually, how lonely and tragic might a C major chord sound, actually, being surrounded by a certain set of harmonies. What could you possibly expect of C major, like? But some composers, especially like Chopin or Mozart, were able to make it sound in a really tragic way. You might also not doing that crescendo in the left hand, just taking some time in the left hand. Just taking some time here and making crescendo only in the right hand. Last chords, of course, are very challenging because you have to play them extremely softly and all notes should sound together. I have made another video about soft playing, so I won't go in much details. But what I would like to add to that is, besides a hand release and a very soft diving in the key all the way down to the bottom, I also use my arms, like those parts of my arms. And you might notice that funny movement on my recording. I didn't invent it to show off or to impress you with my sensitivity. What this movement helps me to achieve actually is to grasp that moment when my fingers reach the bottom of the key and to release them immediately afterwards. So it's a little bit like swimming, actually. And it might work only in case if you would be absolutely relaxed. Thanks for watching, and please write in comments what other pieces you would like to see analyzed on this channel. Have fun playing piano.